Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind association and attendance. As we continue, Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 18, verses 18 to 23. To change that. Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dati Sva Antika. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijanas Hitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhe vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satphala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidwando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, the light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun you are the sun which has risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actual Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsha Sharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you one attains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love upon the Veda. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madeka Bandhu Mat Sanghe Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Man Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss. I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu sadhu tadai natini chochataraka hanamunchakada chinmam premna rikatayospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, who give us saintliness to the unsaintly, who uplifted of the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest. Mahatma told, accompanying pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yotonvayaditaratas Swabhigna Swarat Tene Brahma Hedaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Mrisha Damna Svena Sada Nirastakwakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudev, O pervading personality of God, I offer my respectful obeisance to you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him, the material universe is temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute. Prayanopaisha Sabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Yamatayo Manda Bhagyupadrata. All in one in this age of Kali, men about short lives, they're quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Narayan Namaskritan Narachevam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance to the personality of God. Narayan, unto Narayan Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and the Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai Pumsa Parodharmo Yatho Bhaktira Dokshja, who took a Pratyata Yatma Suprasiditi. The supreme occupation dharma of all humanities, that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadaitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God at Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva vedas tattvam yachgnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learn transcendentals who know the absolute truth calls non-you substance Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shrushrushoshadanasya Vasudeva Katarchisyan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains vanity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Riddantastaya Patrani Vidunati Suritsatam. Shri Krishna, the person of the Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of a truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment. From the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastraprayashu Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tumasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nishtiki. By regular attendance on a class in the Bhagavatam, rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the person of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, and let us cover any feedback anyone has from last week's session, chapter 17. We're actually in chapter 18. So if there's any feedback, just post that while I just takes. Let's see if that's coming up. Bhaktivedanta says, the power of Srila Prabhupada's books and the power of distributing Srila Prabhupada books to others. So many devotees became devotees, so many became devotees because of receiving Srila Prabhupada's books, and how wonderful it transforms their lives. Yes. And why are these books so powerful? Because they are not material, they're not mundane, they are transcendental. They're beyond this material world. It is Krishna appearing in the form of a book, sound. And anyone that comes in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books is really coming in contact with the Supreme Lord and his pure devotees. And that purifies, that transforms. So Prabhupada's books are no doubt very powerful. Every medium that is connected to Krishna means every medium that's connected to the powerhouse of the Supreme Lord. When you touch that live wire, you will get electrocuted whether you like it or not. So people touch that, they get electrocuted, but sometimes they're wearing thick rubber gloves due to all the unlimited negative karma that's there. So when they touch it, nothing seems to happen. So then what they do, they put a book on the shelf. Nothing really happened just by touching the book. But then the book is non-different from the Lord, and therefore, when the time is right and when they are ready and receptive, Super Soul will inspire them. That's the book. We find so many examples. Somebody gets a book, whether they pick it up from a dustbin, or they buy it, or they get it from somebody as a gift, or they get it from some devotee. They take it, they put it in a shelf. Prabhupada said it's a time bomb. It's waiting. Because Krishna may come, but we may not be ready. And when the time is right, because that's what the material world is really there, to give you ample time to suffer, to realize that enough is enough. It's time out. I need to turn. I need to do something. So if you don't learn, no problem. Krishna is eternal. There's no time constraint for Krishna. So if you want to spend billions and billions and trillions and trillions and trillions of lifetimes in the material world, well, so be it. Krishna will keep coming, and Krishna will make arrangements in every single life to try to get you to turn. So Prabhupada's books is one such wonderful way that Krishna has made arrangements so souls can actually turn back. Madhacharya Siddhi says, Hare Krishna, we should not desire to hear about Krishna or chant Hare Krishna to gain or get pleasure, but it should be done only to give pleasure to Krishna, and by giving pleasure, we will receive pleasure. And that conditioning is so deep. To enjoy in this material world is so deep. That's why we are here. That was the whole reason why we came here, to be the supreme, to be the enjoyer. So we try to enjoy in so many ways, gross and subtle. And to try to eradicate that completely is not possible, but at least we are on the right path to purifying our desires so that we can ultimately regain our constitutional position and real ego that I am thus. I am a servant. And the servant's only objective is to give pleasure and service to the master. So slowly but surely we will come to that full realization. Right now it may be in drops and here and there that we try to give pleasure to Krishna, or we try to do something for the pleasure of Krishna. In some cases, it may be very theoretical, it may be very intellectual, it may just be lip service, but at least first step in transforming, first step in realization is at least to know that. So just to know that, hold on, I meant to give pleasure to Krishna. What is this nonsense I'm trying to enjoy? At least that is a starting point, first step. And then from there, we chant Hare Krishna. Chanting Hare Krishna gives pleasure to Krishna. And slowly but surely, that purifies Cheto Darpana Marjanam. And one day, we will fully blossom into our true position as giving pleasure to Krishna. And at that point, we will realize, and we'll see, as we transition, we get more and more pleasure. And the pleasure is not gross. It's not, it's totally different from matter. It's like you getting nothing, but you're experiencing the pleasure. Whereas the material world, you're looking for those objects which are so flickering when you enjoy, and then it increases your desire to enjoy that more and more, and you actually become more and more frustrated and depressed. Mother Sharina says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance appreciation. From last week's class, I have noted the following. We should have single-minded focus on Krishna's transcendental pastime. There are so many distractions that drag the mind away from focus on Krishna. But we have to remind ourselves that there is unlimited bliss in unalloyed devotional service, and only temporary flickering happiness is in those things that are material. Yes, we have to, as Krishna says, Bhagavad Gita, as soon as the mind strays away, bring it back. It strays away, bring it back. Don't get distracted or don't get upset that it goes away or it gets distracted. No, that's the nature of the mind. Just like you have a dog and then the dog barks, you get upset. Why are you barking? Well, then you shouldn't have a dog. Or you have a cow and the cow moves. Stop mooing. No, that's the nature of the cow, to moo. Now, when the cow is mooing, at least we can inquire, why is the cow mooing? What's the reason? Does the cow want something? Or it's an exchange of love? But if we get upset, why why are you mooing? Why are you barking? Then that's not proper. That's not appropriate. It's the nature of the cow, and therefore we should accept. Similarly, similarly, we find that we also have to understand in this material world, the mind will get distracted. There will be suffering. Is just the nature of the material world, and we have to learn to accept. And the beauty is when we know that this is the nature, if I'm doing something right, in the right direction, according to Prabhupada's direction, it's guaranteed to give you the proper result. It's only a question of time, and therefore patience is key. Enthusiasm, confidence, and patience. Rupa Goswami describes in Nectar Devotion. Utsaha Nishchara Daryat. We have to be Daryat, we have to be patient. At the same time, enthusiastic and have the confidence that it will work. Why? Because it's a science, it's spiritual science. We're not dealing with hocus pocus. We're not dealing with the material nature. We're dealing with transcendence. And therefore, transcendence will always succeed. Transcendence will always be victorious. Where there's Arjuna and where there's Krishna, there's victory. So we simply have to have faith and keep on the path, no matter what. Thick, thin, snow, no snow, it doesn't matter. We keep on the path. All right, thank you very much for everyone's feedback. Let us proceed. So Prabhupada's power statements. Therefore, the more we hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord, as they are stated in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the more we can know about his transcendental nature, and thus make definite progress on the path back to God. See, Prabhupada's choice of words. We could make progress. There is a possibility of progress. No, definite progress. Why? Because it's a science. It's tried, tested. Otherwise, we're really wasting our time. And the Lord is not here to cheat. The Lord is not here to, have fun and games. No. The Lord is here to take us back. Therefore, the process is serious. The process is genuine. Then Prabhupada writes, the Lord is unlimited and his name, attributes, pastimes, entourage, variegatedness, etc. unlimited. And those who relish them can do so unlimitedly and still not feel satisfied. So on this path, there is no end. On this path, there is no limit. You cannot say, well, I have studied. I know Krishna now. I love Krishna now. Nope. You'll see those who genuinely love Krishna. If you ask them, do you love Krishna? They'll say no. Why? Because I'm far away. Because if you compare unlimited, then no matter where you are on the journey, when you measure it in relation to unlimited, you still have more to go. Therefore, you'll think, well, gee, I'm far. At the same time, you have pure devotion, you have pure love. So this is the nature of Krishna. Totally different from matter. Speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. And this is very important in terms of the motive. We have to always gauge and monitor our motive. What is my motive for service? What is my motive for chanting? What is my motive for hearing Bhagavatam? If it's anything short of the one object of worship and service to the Supreme Lord, then it's going to give you a corresponding result. Devotional service tinged with the three modes of nature will give you the result tinged with the three modes of nature. So we want to rise, purify, and come to the stage of one object of worship and service, and that is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nothing more. And the audience for such topics should be anxious to hear about him. When such a combination is possible, namely a qualified speaker and a qualified audience, it is then and there very much congenial to continue discourses on the transcendence. So we're going to be covering 18 to 23. Sutta expresses humility and glorifies Krishna. The sages were very happy, and they were giving him feedback that we want to hear more about Krishna. So wonderful that you're speaking. Please tell us more, tell us more. Sutta vacha ahovayam janma brutto dya asmam vriddanu vrittya pimiloma jata do skulyam adim vidunoti shri shagram mahatma nam abhidana yoga. Sri Sutta Goswami said, "O God, although we are born in a mixed caste, we are still promoted in birthright simply by serving and following the great souls who are advanced in knowledge. Even by conversing with such great souls, one can without delay cleanse oneself of all disqualifications resulting from a lower birth." Purport. Sutta Goswami did not take his birth in a Brahmana family. He was born in a family of mixed castes or an uncultured low family. But because of higher association like Sri Sukadev Goswami and the great rishis of Naimisharanya, certainly the disqualification of inferior birth was washed off. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu followed this principle in pursuance of the Vedic usages, and by his transcendental association, even elevated low-born men or those disqualified by birth or action, or those disqualified by birth or action to the status of devotional service and establish them in the position of acharya or authorities. And here Prabhupada is talking about Haridas Thakur. He clearly stated that any man, whatever he may be, whether a Brahmana, Sudra by birth, or a householder, or mendicant by social order, can be accepted as an acharya or guru, a spiritual master, if he is conversant with the science of Krishna. Sutta Goswami learned the science of Krishna from the great rishis and authorities like Sukadev and Vyasadeva, and he was so qualified that even the sages of Naimisharanya eagerly wanted to hear from him the science of Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he had the double association of great soul by hearing and preaching. The transcendental science or the science of Krishna has to be learned from authorities, and when one becomes conversant in science and preaches it, he becomes still more qualified. So the first point is disqualification of birth does not stop one from learning the science of Krishna consciousness from the authorities and preaching the science of Krishna consciousness. Both needs to be done. We hear and we preach. We hear, and whatever we've learned, we share. You don't need to be a Mahabhagavat, a perfect devotee, a pure devotee to share. Whatever little you learn, whatever little you hear, you read, you share. And in this way, you become purified. By reading, by hearing, you become purified. And then by preaching and sharing, you become purified. This is the process. Receive and give. Hear and speak. This is the process. And it's really a process that the Lord has instituted to purify and benefit all the souls that come in contact with this process. And there is absolutely no disqualification, especially no disqualification from birth. So no matter who comes, the key is to keep the hearing and the chanting as the main priority and process. And as long as the hearing and chanting is going on, it's only a question of time that one becomes purified of whatever disqualification there may be. And we see Prabhupada engaged everyone in the process of hearing and chanting. Immaterial of their birth, immaterial of their background, immaterial of caste, creed, position, sex, gender, doesn't matter. The process of hearing and chanting, this is the bona fide process. And if one does this, then he becomes qualified, he becomes purified. So Sutta Goswami had both the advantages, and thus undoubtedly he was completely freed from all disqualifications of low birth and mental agonies. So it's not that when one comes to this world, one comes into a perfect package. This world itself is not a perfect package. And you coming in this world means you're also a damaged package. And our past is really packed with so much, as Prabhupada is saying, mental agonies, all these problems and karma and sin, it's all there accumulated, good or bad. And we need to go through to purify the baggage. So birth also, wherever we are born, is part of that purification of getting to burn the baggage. And unfortunately, in some cases it's worse, in some cases it's better. Due to our past karma, we will get whatever is coming to us according to our actions. So there we are born in this world at a certain point in time, and we are going to come with baggage. Now we will have to go through that baggage, we'll have to tolerate that baggage, we'll have to understand that this is what I'm getting due to my past, but by the process of Krishna consciousness, I'm confident and I know that my future will be bright. My present may be challenging. It's not disastrous because we're on the right path of Krishna consciousness. And it shouldn't be getting worse in the sense of your karma can be worse, and your karma can, give you suffering that just seems to be overwhelming. But the fact that you're on the path of Krishna consciousness means it's going to be better in the future because you are sowing good seeds. You are sowing devotional seeds. You are sowing spiritual seeds, transcendental seeds. And that will give birth to transcendence. Satchit Ananda. That's what's going to give birth to. So our future is no doubt guaranteed to be brilliant, wonderful. And that's what everybody in one sense want. Everybody engages in this world so that the future is bright. Now we're not just looking at, the next day and the next, week. No, we're looking for the future of the next lives. Because this process is from life to life. Just like if a farmer knows that if I plant a seed, I can't expect a harvest tomorrow. No way. Robert also gives another example. If a couple gets married, now they can't expect a child tomorrow. No way. It's going to take 9 months minimum. So similarly, if I plant a seed, it's going to take a few years to harvest. Similarly, when I come to Krishna consciousness, I come with disqualifications due to past karma, but over time, if I do the right thing, it's simply a matter of tolerating and it'll pass. This verse definitely proves that Sutta Goswami's inferior birth did not cause either Srila Sukadeva Goswami to refuse to teach him about the transcendental science or the sages of Namisharanya to refuse to hear lessons from him. So we should never bring birth in any aspect of devotional service as a disqualification. This means that thousands of years ago, there was no bar to learning or preaching the transcendental science because of inferior birth. The rigidity of so-called caste system in Hindu society became prominent only within the last 100 years or so, when the number of Dvija Bandhus or disqualified men in the family of a higher caste increased. Lord Sri Mahaprabhu revived the original Vedic system, and he elevated Haridas Thakur to the position of Namacharya, or the authority in preaching the glories of the holy name of the Lord, although His Holiness Srila Haridas Thakur was pleased to appear in a family of Mohammedans. So it's interesting that here we see Sri Mahaprabhu. Well, firstly, Haridas Thakur is born in a Muslim family. And this was the desire of Srila Haridas Thakur as Lord Brahma. Because when Lord Brahma was witnessing Lord Krishna's pastimes 5,000 years ago, and he was seeing the scene where Krishna and the cowherd boys are exchanging prasad and eating each other's remnants, this really bewildered Lord Brahma. This is God. He's eating other people's remnants. Like, really? And when Brahma, even when Lord Brahma tried to apologize to Krishna, Krishna was like not interested. Yeah, okay, Brahma, you finish your prayers. Okay, you can go back now. And Lord Brahma was a little heartbroken. Did my Lord forgive me or what? He didn't even he just said, go back home. He didn't even say, okay, I accept your apology, no problem. He just, okay, Brahma, you finished. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go. So Lord Brahma then came to Navadvip, performed austerities there to get the blessing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then Lord appeared and Lord Brahma said, my Lord, please, next time when you come and appear in this world, allow me to be born in a low birth so that I don't become proud of my position as Brahma. And Lord Brahma came as Haridas Thakur, born in a Muslim family. And the Sri Mahaprabhu, the Lord took Haridas Thakur and made him Namacharya. So his birth was, so he had disqualification in his birth, but that wasn't a disqualification to become Namacharya because of his attachment, sincerity to the holy name. So we should follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. Such is the power of the pure devotees of the Lord. Ganges water is accepted as pure, and one can become purified by taking a bath in the waters of the Ganges. But as far as the great devotees of the Lord are concerned, they can purify a degraded soul even by being seen by the lower born. What to speak of association? Lord Sri Mahaprabhu wanted to purify the whole atmosphere of the polluted world by sending qualified preachers all over the world to preach the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And it remains with the Indians to take up this task scientifically and thus do the best kind of humanitarian work rather than performing some stereotype, imitation philanthropic work such as opening hospitals. So we see Prabhupada, one time they asked Prabhupada, why don't we open up hospitals and schools? Prabhupada said, everyone's doing that. Let them do that. Why should we bother with that? Our focus is to preach. That is our activity. To give Krishna consciousness. That is our activity. Now, it's not like it's not that you cannot open a hospital where all the doctors are devotees, like in Pune, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. That's a wonderful service. Mumbai. That's a wonderful service where devotees, all devotee doctors come together because they're going to have to work, in a karmi hospital anyway. So if they come together and work in a devotional environment, and that's wonderful. So that's totally different. But just opening, it's like, okay, now we got money, let's open up a hospital and get all the karmis to work there, and open up a school and get all karmis to work there, and open up a restaurant and get karmis to work there, and do feeding it, get karmis to work there. Well, that's everybody's doing. It's not our business. Our business is to give Krishna consciousness. So that is our business. And therefore, Prabhupada was not interested. Prabhupada wanted to do the real humanitarian work, and that is giving the truth of Krishna consciousness. Because you may need a hospital, but if you don't get Krishna consciousness, you're going to need a hospital every year, every life. But if you get Krishna consciousness, then your timeshare for hospitals is going to end sooner or later, because you're going to be back home, back to God. So therefore, our timeshares will stop. That's wanted. Prabhupada says the mental diseases of the present generation are more acute than bodily diseases. We see so many people talking about this point. As Kali Yuga progresses, people are becoming more mentally distressed and diseased, etc. We see a Prabhupada in his Bhaktivinoda purports making very clear this is the case. And it's going to increase. It is quite fit and proper to take up the preaching of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world without delay. This is the only cure. There is no other cure in this world. People may think of other cures. They may consider other cures. They may apply other cures. End of the day, it's either a temporary solution or it will complicate the disease and just increase the complexity. There is no quick solution other than preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. Mahatmanam Abhidana also means a dictionary of great devotees, or a book full of the words of great devotees. Such books of the words of great devotees and those of the Lord are the Vedas and allied literatures, specifically the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we have, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, access to the solution. We have access to engage in others in giving the solution. So while we are taking the medication, we are also able to give the medication. We are able to benefit from the medication, and we're also able to share the medication. That also pleases Krishna. So it's a wonderful service to be purified and to help purify others. 19. Kuta punar grinato nama tasya mahatma mahatame kanta parayanasya yonanta shaktir bhagavanananto mahadgunad vadhyam anantam ahu. And what to speak of those who are under the direction of the great devotees, chanting the holy name of the unlimited, who has unlimited potency, Supreme Personality of Godhead, unlimited in potency and transcendental by attribute, is called the Ananta, unlimited. Dvija Bandhus, or the less intelligent, uncultured men born of higher castes, put forward many arguments against the principle of low caste men becoming Brahmanas in this life. They argue that birth in a family of Sudras or less than Sudra is made possible by one's previous sinful acts, and that one therefore has to complete the term of the disadvantages due to lower birth. And in answer to these false logicians, Srimad Bhagavatam asserts that one who chants the holy name of the Lord under the direction of a pure devotee can at once get freed from the disadvantages due to lower caste birth. A pure devotee of the Lord does not commit any offenses while chanting the holy name of the Lord. There are 10 different offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord. To chant the holy name under the direction of a pure devotee means to chant offenselessly. Offenseless chanting of the holy name of the Lord is transcendental, and therefore, such chanting can at once purify one from all the effects of all kinds of previous sins. So no doubt there is a disqualification in terms of lower birth, because that is negative karma, and therefore there is negative energy related to that. But if one takes advantage of the holy name of Krishna under the guidance of a pure devotee, then whatever disqualification may be there in whatever form or shape, we become purified of that by the holy name of the Lord. And therefore we find Prabhupada also emphasized, Prabhupada just didn't give chanting, but he gave the art of chanting. So yes, we need to chant, but there is a process in terms of chanting. There's a certain qualification or certain quality in terms of chanting. Even though we say there's no hard and fast rules in chanting, and that means anyone can chant at any time, in any place, in any circumstance that one can chant. But at the same time, if one wants to get the desired result, as Prabhupada is saying, that such chanting can at once purify one from the effects of all kinds of previous sins. So if we want Krishna in the form of the holy name to eradicate all our sins, then the criteria, the qualification is offenseless chanting. Understanding the 10 offenses and trying to avoid the 10 offenses, which Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, inattentive chanting is the root, the breeding ground of all offenses. So we want to try to overcome inattention more and more and more. And the more we overcome inattention and try to chant and hear the holy name and associate with the holy name, over time, we become purified of all previous sins. When we go from offensive chanting to offenseless chanting, we then eventually come to pure chanting, Sudanam. This is what Srila Mahaprabhu came to give this world. Chanting of pure names imbued with love. When Srila Mahaprabhu was here with his associates 500 years ago, they were chanting Sudanam to be in the association of these great souls and experience the chanting of pure name was out of this world, truly out of this world. You know, sometimes we may say, oh, that was out of the world. Yeah, but this is truly out of the world. Why? Because they were chanting, Srila Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, the Acharyas, Advaita Acharya, all of these great souls, they were chanting with pure, they were chanting purely, pure devotion. Krishna in the form of Radharani, chanting pure. There's no tinge of mundane material aspects attached to that chanting. It's completely pure. And therefore they would experience great ecstasy, transformation. That's incomprehensible, inconceivable on the material plane. And that's the level, that's the stage, that's the journey that we're on. It's not like chanting is just a ritual that we're just doing it. Oh yeah, I have to chant my rounds, okay. No, There's an objective, there's a goal. I'm trying to chant to purify my consciousness, to come to the level of chanting purely. When I come to the level of chanting purely, pure, imbued with devotion, then there will be no stopping. That's the journey. This offenseless chanting indicates that one has fully understood the transcendental nature of the holy name and has thus surrendered to the Lord. When we understand that I am a spiritual being and I don't belong in this world and I belong to Krishna, I need to surrender to Krishna. As soon as that realization dawns upon us, we will take the first step. And the first step is chanting the holy name. Therefore, Prabhupada describes that chanting is the first sign that one is surrendering to Krishna. If one is not chanting Hare Krishna, it means one has not come to that realization that I belong to Krishna and I need to surrender. You still want to be independent. And if you still want to be independent, well, then you take the independent reaction that comes according to your action. So when you understand that I am a servant of Krishna and I need to get my act together, I need to change, I will accept that, yes, I need to chant. Even if it's one round. Because that's the first sign telling Krishna that I'm sorry. I'm such a fool, a rascal, nonsense. I made a mistake. And now I want to turn back. I want to change. And that change, that sign of change is reflected in the activity of chanting the holy name of Krishna. So then I start chanting one round and I start progressing. Now, lucky for us, Prabhupada has given us a benchmark, minimum 16 rounds. So at least we now know, okay, I started the journey, one round is not good enough. I need to start increasing. Then we start increasing. And then I come to 16. And as I'm chanting and I'm trying to purify, that 16 will not stay 16. It eventually needs to increase more and more and more and more. 32, 64, and eventually 24 hours a day. And as one is increasing the number of names that one is chanting, one is increasing one's surrender to the Lord. And when one comes to the level of chanting 24 hours a day, then that means one is completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The holy name has been resounding non-stop in one's consciousness. Transcendentally, the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical, being absolute. The holy name of the Lord is as powerful as the Lord. The Lord is all-powerful personality of God, and he has innumerable names, which are all non-different from him and are equally powerful also. In his last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord asserts that one who surrenders fully unto him is protected from all sins by the grace of the Lord. And since his name and he himself are identical, the holy name of the Lord can similarly protect the devotee from all effects of sins. The chanting of the holy name of the Lord can undoubtedly deliver one from the disadvantages of low caste birth. The Lord's unlimited power is extended on and on by the unlimited expansions of his devotees and incarnations, and thus every devotee and incarnation can also be equally surcharged with the potency of the Lord. Since the devotee is surcharged with the potency of the Lord, even fractionally, disqualification due to low birth cannot stand in the world. So whether it's a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, or whether it's the holy name, by coming in contact with these transcendental personalities, no disqualification is a disqualification to perfect one's life. Nectar Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami describes, and Prabhupada expands on this point, that there is no material circumstance can check devotional service, pure devotional service. Nothing can face pure devotional service. There is no obstacle, there is no disqualification, there is no impurity that can block the progression of pure devotional service. Because pure devotional service is the most powerful energy that exists in creation. And in the form of the personality, Srimati Radharani is the most supreme personality. And because she is the most supreme of all personalities, no other form of energy can stop the flow of her mercy. And as long as we are trying to access her flow of mercy in the form of the holy name, in the form of the devotees, in the form of the incarnations, innumerable incarnations, we will overcome every single obstacle, every single disqualification, every single bad karmic reaction. Will it take time? Yes. Will it be overnight? It could be. Just like Khatvanga Maharaj. Khatvanga Maharaj, in a moment, he became totally purified. So yes, it can. It all depends on you. Generally, just like, can you get an honorary degree instantly? No, but somebody can be given an honorary degree. So yes, it's generally not the norm. For the masses, they have to go to university, they have to register, they have to attend classes, they have to pass the exam, they have to study and pass the exam. So it requires time. So for the masses, yes, it requires time to embrace the process, to increase then the process and stay on the path, knowing, having confidence that any disqualifications, good, bad, or ugly, that's coming from our past will be purified. And we will become transcendently situated. Why? Because we are associating with transcendence. 20. Etavatalam nanu suchitena gunerasam naiti sa yes saya nasya hitvetaran prarthayato vibhuti yasyangri reno justa na bipsho. It is now ascertained that he, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited and there is none equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune even by prayers. But this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service. Purport. According to the Shrutis, the personality of Godhead or the Parameshwar, Parabrahman, has nothing to do. He has no equal, nor does anyone excel him. He has unlimited potencies, and his every action is carried out systematically in his natural and perfect ways. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is full in himself, and he has nothing to accept from anyone else, including the great demigods like Brahma. Others ask for favors of the goddess of fortune, and despite such prayers, she declines to award such favors. but still she renders service unto the Supreme Personality of God, although he has nothing to accept from her. The personality of Godhead in his Garbhodaksaya Vishnu feature begets Brahma, the first created person in the material world. From his navel, lotus stem, and not in the womb of the goddess of fortune, who is eternally engaged in his service. These are some of the instances of his complete independence and perfection. The statement that he has nothing to do does not mean he's impersonal. He is transcendently so full of inconceivable potencies that simply by his willing, everything is done without physical, personal endeavors. He is therefore called Yogeshwar, or the Lord of all mystic powers. Krishna can do anything. The supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, can do anything. Even though he has nothing to do, he can do everything and anything. Why? Because he has unlimited potencies, and these are unlimited, inconceivable potencies. Therefore, there will be situations where you cannot understand how the Lord does things because there are inconceivable potencies. You cannot conceive them. And even though he has nothing to do, does not imply, as Prabhupada is saying, he's impersonal, because he does everything through his potencies. Krishna's name is Satya Sankalpa. He thinks and it happens. He wills and it happens. So, in essence, he is Parama, he's Yogeshwar. He has unlimited potencies. No one is equal to him. Nothing can excel him. He's appeared in the form of the holy name. We take shelter of the holy name. That means we're taking shelter of the most powerful, unlimited, omnipotent personality who's independent, has nothing to do, and can do everything just by thinking, just by willing, just by his desire. So if Krishna desires, yes, you're pure. Yes, you can purify. Yes, you're free. Immediately, whatever karmic reactions are there, instantly they vanish, they're gone, they disappeared. Why? Because the potencies, these energies have already acted. And it can be instant because they are unlimited potencies. They're all powerful potencies. So really, the onus is upon us and our desire to become purified. It's not like Krishna doesn't have the potencies to purify us. No. Krishna has unlimited potencies to do unlimited, inconceivable things. So it is on our side that we need to become convinced. We need to strengthen our conviction and our desire. We need to be convinced that I want to become purified. I need to, get my act together and surrender. When that conviction, that sincerity solidifies, then it's only a question of time. As soon as Krishna says yes, or the holy name says yes, the rest is history. So we simply have to continue associating nicely to purify our life, to become more and more convinced that without doubt, without a shadow of doubt, not a fraction, not an inkling of doubt should be there in terms of what, who am I and where should I be going? What should I want and what should I be doing? There should be absolutely no doubt, because as long as there's a doubt, then the Lord will wait. We see with Arjuna, the Lord was patient, waiting to clarify all his doubts. And Arjuna took advantage of asking questions and clarifying the doubts that they're plaguing him. Until at the end, when Arjuna says, now my Lord, I'm ready to do your will. Whatever you say, I will do. So we want to follow in the footsteps of Arjuna and become totally convinced. And when we become convinced with no excuses, then the Lord will do everything His side, according to His will and desire. Because not according to your desire, not according to your will, because as servants, it's Krishna's will. It's when the master decides. We simply do our part. And what's our part? Chant the holy name, engage in devotional service, hear about the Lord. This is our part. And according to His timeline, according to His desire, let Him unfold our future. 21. Atapiyat padan nakavas shrishtam jagadvirin choparitar hanamba shesham punyayata shesham punat yan yato mo mukundat konam loke bhagavat padartha. Who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the waters emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to Lord Shiva as worshipable. Worshipable welcome. This very water, the Ganges, is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva. Purport. The conception of many gods in the Vedic literatures by the ignorant is completely wrong. The Lord is one without a second, but He expands Himself into many. And this is confirmed in the Vedas. Such expansions of the Lord are limitless. Some of them are the Supreme Lord Himself in full, and some are the living entities. The living entities are not as powerful as the Lord's plenary expansions, and therefore there are two different types of expansions. Lord Brahma is generally one of the living entities, and Lord Shiva is between the Lord and the living entities. In other words, even demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, who are the chief amongst all demigods, are never equal to or greater than Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, the all-powerful demigods like Brahma, Shiva, engage in worship of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Therefore, who can be more powerful than Mukunda, Lord Krishna, and thus factually deserve to be called the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So it's interesting that in the Puranas, we find there's this conflict of who is the Supreme. Yeah, so it's right in the verse, just saying, who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to Lord Shiva as worshipable welcome. So that means the water that was coming down in the form of the Ganges, worshipable welcome. Lord Shiva was receiving it with that consciousness. So the point that Prabhupada is making is that only Krishna, only Lord Vishnu is the supreme and worshipable by everyone, including Lord Brahma and Shiva, who are the greatest of all personalities in creation after Krishna. Lord Brahma is the first living entity, and Lord Shiva is in between Jiva and Vishnu Tattva. he falls in his own category of Shiva Tattva. So he's God and not God. And we find in the Puranas, there are scriptures that proclaim Brahma is God. There are scriptures that proclaim Shiva is God, and that Shiva is greater than Vishnu. And when we don't understand scripture in its totality, we become confused. So we know from Prabhupada and that previous acharyas that the Puranas are in the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And therefore, according to the Purana that you are connected to in relation to the modes, those Puranas are emphasizing and encouraging a higher form of evolution for you to transcend or elevate yourself. So in that Purana, if it's in a mode of ignorance, it'll be promoting that a certain demigod is supreme, because that's the level that you are at. And instead of confusing you of higher transcendence, Srila Vyasadeva gave the Puranas to help all the living entities according to the different grades of modes to be elevated to take the next step. The classic example is like in kindergarten school or in grade 1, 2, you learn -1, you count. But we know in higher grades, -1 is -2. So there's something that's taught to you which is apparently incorrect, but it's not incorrect because it's according to your understanding and capacity to understand. You will not be able to understand negative numbers as a child because it doesn't, it's called imaginary numbers. You can't imagine, your imagination has not been developed. And because imagination has not been developed, they stick with the point that 0 is a starting point and it goes to the positive side. There's no negative numbers. And then your imagination starts to develop as you grow in school and grow in age. And then in the higher grades, they now teach you, oh, there's actually a negative number line. So like that, the Vedas also, the Puranas also, they present knowledge according to the level of individuals, which on a higher level apparently seems incorrect, but it's basically there to help you grow from that level. So you have to transcend the three modes, ignorance, go through that evolution, then come to passion and go through all the scriptures of those, and then come to goodness and go through all those, and then you come to Amala Purana. Of the 6 Puranas that are in a mode of goodness, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of the Puranas, is in a mode of Sudasattva, pure goodness. So as you evolve, you eventually come to the Bhagavatam. And this may take millions and billions of lifetimes. And here we are. By some good fortune, we have access, exposure, association of the greatest of all scriptures that transcends all modes, that exists, that is free from envy, free from cheating propensity, that's giving the highest truth, the highest knowledge, the highest destination, the highest personalities, the highest devotees. By the mercy of Prabhupada. And the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and everyone else is worshipping him. Everyone is a servant of him. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give the same philosophy, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and everyone else and every other expansion and incarnation is a servant in the form of das. They have this dasya consciousness of serving Krishna. Even the incarnations. You see Balaram. Balaram is Krishna's first expansion. And even Balaram has this consciousness of service to Krishna. Even though he's the supreme personality of God and himself, but he has this consciousness that I'm serving Krishna. And Balaram serves Krishna in every of the rasas. See, this is the extent. And if Balram, who's the first expansion of Krishna, practically non-different from Krishna, if he has this consciousness of service to Krishna, and Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme enjoyer, and I'm the servant, then what to talk about everybody else and every other expansion, including the insignificant jiva like us. And then we get jivas in the material world. Prabhupada says in every street corner in India, they claim, I am God. How foolish. They are caught in the snare of Maya, the last snare of Maya, to think you are God. It's like absurdity to the highest level to think you are God. And then you still have a toothache. And you have to go for some transplant. Your kidney failed. And you say you're God. And you're getting old. And then you get even more foolish people who consider them to be God and worship them and glorify them. Even more foolish. And we may have been in that boat if it wasn't for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada to take us out of that darkness. And not only take us out of the darkness, but give us the clarity, give us the clear vision, the concise truth with such clarity, such precision, such depth, such purity that's inconceivable. Because now if you ask anyone who's affiliated to Krishna consciousness and you ask them, who's God? It's Krishna. It's like without a doubt. Robert continues, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, Lord Brahma, and Lord Shiva are not independently powerful. They are powerful as expansions of the Supreme Lord, and all of them are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And so also are the living entities. They are the four sects of worshipful devotees of the Lord. And the chief amongst them are the Brahma Sampradaya, Rudra Sampradaya, and Shri Sampradaya, descending directly from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, respectively. Besides the above mentioned three Sampradayas, there is the Kumara Sampradaya, descending from Sanat Kumar. All of the four original Sampradayas are still scrupulously engaged in a transcendental service of the Lord up to the present day, and they declare that Lord Krishna Mukunda is the supreme personality of Godhead, and that no other personality is equal to him or greater than him. And any other knowledge coming outside these disciplic succession will give you a concoction, perversion, a variation of incorrect knowledge. And we see these four bona fide disciplic successions. They worship Vishnu, they worship Krishna, they worship Mukunda as the supreme personality of God. 22. Yatra nurakta sahashevadira vyapoya dehadishu sangam udam prajanti tat paramaham syan antyam yasmin ahimsopa sama swadharmam. Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna, can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including gross body and subtle mind, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, in which non-violence and renunciation are consequent. Only the self-controlled can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-control means not indulging in sense enjoyment more than is necessary. So it's interesting how Prabhupada is taking self-control and relating it very practically in terms of sense enjoyment. And Prabhupada says more than necessary. So we're not talking about dry sense, avoiding sense gratification that then becomes so dry. there is sense enjoyment. You have to satisfy the senses, otherwise you'll become crazy. But we satisfy the senses as authorized by Srila Prabhupada. For example, Prabhupada made sure that they should be sumptuous prasadam, sumptuous feast. That means we have the ability or the prerogative to enjoy nice prasadam, which is not against the principle of being self-controlled or devotional service. In fact, taking only Krishna prasad means self-controlled because of the process of offering that to the Supreme Lord. Even when they try to stop, sumptuous prasad, Prabhupada said, no, for the devotees, this is the only sense gratification, so it's authorized. We enjoy with our eyes. We see the beautiful deity form of Krishna. We see the beautiful pictures of Krishna. We're enjoying with our eyes. We are engaging our ears in hearing the holy name of Krishna, Kirtan. So in Krishna consciousness, there is enjoyment, but the enjoyment is related to Krishna. It's not mundane sense gratification. So we're transforming, or we're replacing mundane enjoyment, mundane gratification with spiritual gratification. Because by engaging and giving pleasure to Krishna, we also enjoy. So by feeding Krishna sumptuous prasad, then Krishna eats with his eyes and leaves it behind for us to enjoy. This is Krishna's mercy. So we're not depriving the senses. We're not starving the senses. We are still indulging in sense gratification as prescribed by the acharyas, which becomes necessary to survive in this world, to then transcend this world. And those who are self-controlled are given over, and those who are not self-controlled are given over to sense enjoyment. Dry philosophical speculation is subtle sense enjoyment of mind. Sense enjoyment leads one to the path of darkness. And those who are self-controlled can make progress on the path of liberation from the conditioned life of material existence. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should not go on the path of darkness, but should make a progressive march towards the path of light or liberation. Self-control is actually achieved not by artificial stopping the senses from material enjoyment, but by becoming factually attached to the Supreme Lord by engaging one's unalloyed senses in the transcendental service of the Lord. So give pleasure to the senses in relation to Krishna. The senses cannot be forcibly curbed, but they can be given proper engagement. Purified senses, therefore, are always engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This perfectional stage of sense engagement is called bhakti yoga. And that is why, renunciates, sannyasis, especially in like the Mayavadi school, they cannot appreciate, because they're trying to become, they're trying to detach from everything material. And here we see devotees are, it's like if you look at Prabhupada was flying in planes. Prabhupada was driving in, opulent vehicles. Prabhupada was using material facilities, building temples, opulent temples. And as somebody in a renounced order will think, wow, that's Maya. But no, that is the perfection of renunciation. Perfection of detachment. One time Prabhupada was walking and there was a beautiful mansion. Somebody's mansion. So Prabhupada pointed to the mansion and told the devotees, I am detached from this mansion. And then Prabhupada said, that's an absurd statement. I am detached from this mansion, because it's not even yours in the first place. So for you to say, I'm detached, I have no attachment to this mention, that's absurdity, because it's not your mention in the first place. So you can't say you're detached. You can only be detached from something that's yours. So therefore, right, whatever is given to us, we use in the service of Krishna. That is real renunciation. That's real detachment. And yes, right, as we become more and more purified, then the quality of that detachment, the quality of that offering becomes more and more purified. At least we understand in principle that we engage everything in the service of Krishna, because everything ultimately belongs to Krishna. And however Krishna wants to reciprocate, then we leave that in Krishna's hands. So real self-control really means becoming attached more and more to the Supreme Lord. So those who are attached to the means of bhakti yoga are effectually self-controlled and can all of a sudden give up their homely or bodily attachments for the service of the Lord. And this is wanted at a time of death. This is wanted as we progress on the path. Transform everything spiritually and become attached to Krishna 100% and leave behind this material world in the form of matter, a consciousness of exploiting the material world. This is called the Paramahamsa stage. Hamsa or swan accepts only milk out of a mixture of milk and water. Similarly, those who accept the service of the Lord instead of service of matter are called Paramahamsa. So that consciousness of exploiting matter, but rather giving pleasure to Krishna, needs to be revived, resuscitated. They are naturally qualified with all the good attributes, such as pridelessness, freedom from vanity, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, respectability, worship, devotion, and sincerity. All these godly qualities exist in the devotees of the Lord spontaneously. Such Paramhamsas who are completely given up to the service of the Lord are very rare. They are very rare even amongst liberated souls. Real non-violence means freedom from envy. In the world, everyone is envious of his fellow being, but a perfect Paramhamsa, being completely given up to the service of the Lord, is perfectly non-envious. So yes, you could say like a very practical, down-to-earth example of how Bhagavatam becomes the perfect solution. How is Bhagavatam a perfect solution? Because if you study Bhagavatam, you become a devotee. You engage in devotional service. You understand Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead. You start to engage in service. When you start to engage in service, you become free from the envious mentality. And when you become free from the envious mentality, and the root of envy is envy to Krishna. So when we become free from that, we then really see everyone and everything in relation to Krishna as part and parcel of Krishna. And that's the only time real non-violence exists. Because now you are not violent with any aspect of nature or personality or living entity, both mind, body, and words, because you are seeing everything in relation to Krishna. So therefore you are sensitive of how you are using the energies, how you are sensitive to how you're responding and reciprocating with other living entities. Because why? Krishna is the center. You're seeing, oh, this is Krishna's servant. Oh, this is Krishna's energy. Therefore, you're responding accordingly. But a perfect Paramhamsa, being completely given up to the service of the Lord, is perfectly non-envious. He loves every living being in relation with the Supreme Lord. Real renunciation means perfect dependence on God. Every living being is dependent on someone or someone else because he is so made. Actually, everyone is dependent on the mercy of the Lord, Supreme Lord. But when one forgets his relation with the Lord, he becomes dependent on the conditions of material nature. Renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the conditions of material nature and thus becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. As we progress more and more on the path of Krishna consciousness, this dependence on Krishna begins to become more and more and more a reality. Like Prabhupada says, we could have security, but really our security is dependence on Krishna. So we do what's practical, but actually internally, our dependence really is on Krishna. And that becomes more and more awakened and a reality as we progress on the path of Krishna consciousness. We do not depend on anything material. So ultimately, we leave it to Krishna. This is dependence. Because the material situation may change. The material situation is transient. The material situation always fluctuates. And you can never, it's unexpected. You can't predict. It's unpredictable. And it's material. It's like oil and water. It's not really part of our nature. So to really depend on matter means suffering. And therefore, a devotee starts to revive and starts to increase his dependence on Krishna. Even if it starts with, yeah, I depend on Krishna, whatever Krishna wants. And then when something bad happens, we become upset. Okay, no problem. At least we depending on Krishna. So even if it starts like that, no problem. See, it's an evolution. It's a growing journey because it's changing deep psychological belief systems that we have developed over lifetimes. So Prabhupada is guiding us. Prabhupada is pushing us in that direction. As we go through the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada's purports are molding. And we will see, for example, as we go chapter by chapter, canto by canto, this will come out very clear. Who are those that depend on Krishna? In what situations did they depend on Krishna? What did they do in every situation in relation to depending on Krishna? How did they respond? What was the outcome? What was the result? And the first example that we're going to hear is Maharaj Parikshit. What situation was he put in? How did he depend on Krishna? What was the outcome? So renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the conditions of material nature and thus becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the conditions of matter. This Paramahamsa stage is the highest perfectional stage in Bhakti Yoga, the process of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So it starts a journey of evolving our dependence on Krishna. Like a child who understands that he's a child related to a parent, that's my father, he's dependent on his father. Child is naturally dependent on his father. Everything, Dede, father, Pita. Because he's naturally situated as a child. So we are children of Krishna. We have deviated. We've depended on conditions of matter, nature. And now we need to change that conditioning and start depending on Krishna. And Krishna will give us the playground, the material world, to test where our real dependence lies. And he'll coach us through these different experiences to ultimately realize that, yes, we should simply depend on him and let him guide our life and do what is best for us. 23. Aham hi prishtor yamano bhavadir achaksha atmavagamo trayavan nabha patantyatma samam patat trinas tata samam vishnu gatim vipaschita. O rishis, who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge allows. As birds fly in the sky as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realizations allow. So a wonderful example of dependence on Krishna. I'm depending on Krishna. So as far as Krishna can allow me to fly, as far as Krishna can allow me to describe, so I will describe. I will describe. It is Krishna that's giving me the potency to describe. It's not my own knowledge. So Sudha Goswami is very humbly responding. The supreme absolute truth is unlimited. No living being can know about the unlimited by his limited capacity. The Lord is impersonal, personal, and localized. By his impersonal feature, he is all-pervading Brahman. By his localized feature, he is present in everyone's heart as the supreme soul. And by his unlimited personal feature, he is the object of transcendental loving service by his fortunate associates, pure devotees. As birds can fly in only part of the sky, similarly, great learned devotees can only partly estimate the pastimes of the Lord in different features. So Srila Sudha Goswami has rightly taken this position in describing the pastimes of the Lord as far as he has realized. Factually, only the Lord himself can describe himself, and his learned devotees can also describe him as far as the Lord gives him the power of description. One time they asked Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada, do you know everything? Prabhupada said, as much as Krishna wants me to know. Because only Krishna is unlimited and only Krishna can know his unlimited nature. For the living entity to know is impossible. So we know as much as Krishna allows. Prabhupada also says, because Krishna is unlimited, then what should you know about Krishna? How much should you know about Krishna? Well, you should know as much as he's described in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So as much as Krishna is describing himself in Bhagavad Gita, we should know. As much as Krishna is giving himself in the form of the Bhagavatam, we should know. In that way, we know as much as Krishna wants us to know. And the pure devotees, they don't claim to know everything about Krishna. You cannot. And they don't claim that they have the power to speak about Krishna. No. They claim that I'm able to share and I'm able to speak and I'm able to give the glories of Krishna as far as Krishna is allowing me to share. Again, the dependence of Krishna. So very wonderful mood that Sudha Goswami is presenting. Just another point before we end. Here, Sudha Goswami is also saying, who are as powerfully pure as the sun. So Sudha Goswami is also appreciating the sages, their audience, their enthusiasm, their desire. That because of their purity, their enthusiasm, their association, he's also getting inspired to speak. So the association is two ways. The speaker is speaking because of sincerity of those who are hearing, and those who are hearing, they're giving opportunity to the speaker, and they're also hearing from the speaker. So both the audience and the speaker are mutually interdependent, giving each other there's sincere and pure association. And with the dependence on the Supreme Lord, they're able to hear and associate and purify. So next week, we will hear Sutta Goswami starting the pastime of Maharaj Parikshit and Maharaj Parikshit's life. What happened in Maharaj Parikshit's life? What are the lessons we can start learning from this most exemplary personality, by whose good fortune we have received the fruit of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande, Hari Hari Bol. Are there any questions or comments anyone has? Please type in the chat. Jagannath Priya Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for today's most transcendental class. Going to be load shedded at 6 o'clock. Yes. Thank you very much for your feedback and your association. Amrit Radhika says, absolutely fantastic class. Thank you, Prabhu. We are grateful. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. It's only by the mercy of Prabhupada, only by the mercy of Guru and Gauranga and the Bhagavatam. All credit goes to them. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, we are really very fortunate despite having no qualification to have the source of Srimad Bhagavatam, the holy name, etc. One day by Krishna's mercy, we may have the power, we may have proper gratitude and appreciation for Srila Prabhupada and all wonderful gifts he has given all of us. So nice feedback, Shaman Prabhu, very interesting. In relation to the first point, we are really very fortunate despite having no qualification to associate Srimad Bhagavatam, the holy name, etc. And that's true. If we consider, we have to be, in terms of the Vedic system, you have to be a Sanskrit scholar to associate with the Bhagavatam. Because if you're not a Sanskrit scholar, the verses are in Sanskrit, you don't understand a thing, right? So you have to be a Sanskrit scholar. Now, we know Sanskrit scholars, and yet we are having the association of the Bhagavatam. So that's just one example of a disqualification. Even the holy name from the Vedas, there are certain mantras that you need qualification. And Srila Mahaprabhu and Prabhupada have come to give us the holy name, no qualification required. So yes, so much disqualification, yet we have access. So that's true. Next point you made was one day by Krishna's grace, we will have proper gratitude and appreciation. So in Madhurya Dambhini, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur describes that when you perfect, at the stage of prema, when you perfect your life, you will cry in so much regret, but gratitude to the holy name. You'll be crying because you'll be thinking that, my dear Nam Prabhu, now I realize who you are. And all this while, I've neglected you. I've been inattentive. I didn't appreciate your association. Please forgive me. I'm a rascal. I'm nonsense. And you'll be crying and crying and crying of how you were dealing with the holy name when now you understand truly who the holy name is. So yes, that day will come when we really look back and we think, wow, what good fortune, but at the same time, how fallen we were that we did not really appreciate at that time what we've been given. And that all my lack of appreciation, lack of really embracing, what we've been given was also not a disqualification to come to the stage of perfection. Because Krishna could say, oh, just see, I'm God, and yet you still, messing around. Okay, I'm out of your life. Forget it. You what they say, like a forgotten case. You're totally useless. I'm out of here. I'm out of your life. No. They never give up. That's the most amazing and astounding thing. So yes, that day will come. We just have to stick on the path and keep going. Never give up. Madhachan said, thank you so much to learn from March Parikshit's pastime. Yes. And we're going to start that journey next week. So thank you very much for everyone's time and association. Until next week. Pantrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai. Go Pramanande. Hari Hari Bol.